Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd Family part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. We still have one highly ranked college football team playing right now. Since they're out west, we have BYU and Kansas, and that game is at halftime, but it'll be between 1:30 and 2 o'clock on the East Coast by the time that game ends. And I just think that's too late to do a video. So maybe I can come back later on this week and talk about that game, especially if BYU does lose. But I wanted to come on here and talk about some of the games from Saturday in the world of college football, and might even mention some of the games from earlier in the week. Of course, now we have college football on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturday. If you jump on here live, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section down below. Make sure you give the video a like and a thumbs up. If you have not yet subscribed, please do so. But before I talk college football, let me make one quick comment about the Mike Tyson Jake Paul boxing match from Friday night, because I started telling everybody on Thursday that it was going to go the distance and Jake Paul was going to win by decision. And of course, that's what happened. And I'm bringing this up because I always talk here on the channel about how I always, whether it's football, baseball, basketball, racing, wrestling, even boxing. Hey there, Big Putowski, glad to have you here. Hey there, Map, glad to have you here. I always try to look at things logically and never show favoritism towards one person or one team because I like them, or show hatred towards somebody else because I hate them. I just try to look at things logically. And I knew Jake Paul is not strong enough to knock Mike Tyson out. But Mike Tyson had a boxing match about 20 years ago, and he looked flat out terrible. He came out of retirement about 4 years ago and looked flat out awful. He looked terrible. And last I checked, Father Time is undefeated. Father Time has never lost. And if you came out of retirement 4 years ago and you looked flat out pitiful, you looked awful, and now you're 4 years older and you're 4 years slower, and now you're fighting somebody that's way younger than you, well, to me, logic tells you you're not going to win. Now, had Mike Tyson knocked him out in the first round, he could have won. But possibly Mike Tyson would have won round two by decision. But you could tell by round three that Mike Tyson was done. I mean, he had absolutely nothing left. Hey there, Lace. Glad to have you here too. But it's good for Jake Paul because Jake Paul actually wants to be a boxer. He's actually trying to have a career in boxing. And if you go out there and you lose to somebody 60 years old, your boxing career is toast. But Roy Jones Jr., leading up to the fight, has been telling people that if you watch Mike Tyson's legs and his footwork, that he no longer has it. He's not good anymore. So if Roy Jones Jr. says that and he knows boxing, I think it's a good idea to listen to what he's saying. But I think everybody wanted Mike Tyson to win just because, for whatever reason, even though none of us know Jake Paul personally, almost everybody has decided that they just do not like Jake Paul. So even though logic tells you Mike Tyson's too old because 58 is 58 and Father Time's undefeated, I think everybody convinced themselves, just because they hate Jake Paul, that even though it's illogical to think that Mike Tyson was going to win. But on to some college football. Back on Wednesday night, Toledo defeated Central Michigan 37-10. And Lace, I appreciate you asking the question, but I don't play music here on the channel. I would probably get a copyright strike if I tried to play music unless it was YouTube approved music. But I do appreciate you asking. On Thursday night, East Carolina defeated Tulsa 38-31. Then on Friday night, Washington defeated UCLA 31-19. Arizona defeated Houston 27-3. And now let's move into Saturday. Texas looked pretty good on defense, but they just looked lethargic and slow all day on offense. But they still defeat Arkansas 20-10. Those two teams were bitter rivals for many, many, many years back in the old conference days before we had a lot of the newer conferences. They played each other every year for a long time. And I heard earlier this week, I want to say it was one of the Arkansas coaches, I believe, but I could be wrong, say that it's more important to hate Texas than it is to be an Arkansas fan. And that's how much Arkansas just hates Texas and vice versa. Ohio State, speaking of looking sloppy, they looked sloppy at the beginning. It was probably mid-second quarter, and it was Northwestern 7, Ohio State nothing, because the Buckeyes just could not do nothing on offense. But luckily, the Buckeyes have a really good defense, and Northwestern just couldn't score. Then I think Ohio State ended up scoring on 5 straight possessions. So the score looked like a blowout, and it really was. But it was close at the beginning, and Northwestern just couldn't move the ball. Clemson wins 24-20. All the Clemson fans should be excited because we finally got to see Cade Klubnik have a game-winning drive. Mo Lester is your neighbor. Well, that's good to hear, and I would say your name, but I can't really tell what your name is, but Mo Lester is your neighbor. But up until that last drive when Cade Klubnik led Clemson down the field in 20 seconds, I think they had 20 yards of offense in the whole second half. They were up 17-7 at halftime, but in the second half, Pittsburgh had scored 13, and Clemson hadn't scored because they had, I want to say, right at 20 yards of offense in the whole second half. Bigfoot stole your catalytic converter in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Well, I hate to hear that, Robert, but I am glad you spotted Bigfoot. And Pittsburgh kicked the field goal and took the lead with 1:36 to go. They went up 20-17, and I thought, this game's over because Clemson's offense just looked flat out awful. Pittsburgh made the decision they were going to take away Phil Maffa and make Clemson beat them throwing the ball. And it worked in the first half. The first half was the best I've ever seen Cade Klubnik look. His first 17 passes were either complete or dropped. They had 4 drops. The other 13 were complete. He didn't have not one bad pass. Everything was right on the money. In the second half, it was the opposite. I mean, his passes were everywhere. And they got behind, and then they got the ball with 1:36 to go. Thank you, Laya. I appreciate the kind words. And I bought this cap at the mall. There's a store inside the mall that sells sports hats from any sport that you like, whether it's college, NFL, NASCAR, NBA, college basketball, Major League Baseball. And they sell hats, and I bought this hat in there. But Clemson got the ball down 20-17, and I thought this game's over. You know, we ain't moved the ball in the whole second half. Hey there, Amanda. Glad to have you here. And they got the ball, and in 3 plays, they went 75 yards and scored and went up 24-20. And that ended with a Cade Klubnik 50-yard touchdown run. And I thought, well, now we scored too fast. Now Pittsburgh is going to come back and score again and still win the game. and I was worried because I had 116 left and 2 timeouts. And then they got to midfield, and there was still like 50 seconds left, and our best two defensive players were on the sideline, and I thought, oh no, that's a bad sign. But Clemson does hold on for the win, 24-20. Florida defeats LSU 27-16. And I even mentioned this a couple of days ago. I'm not sure what day it was now. I do so many college football videos now. Robert, you want to hear my pick for the national championship? Well, honestly, I haven't picked one. I did say the other day that if I was going to pick a national champion, it would be Ohio State. But really, I haven't picked one, and I probably won't pick one until the playoffs start and I see how the 12-team playoff bracket looks. Because to me, until then, you really can't say, because I know who I think are the two best teams in the country, and as of right now, I would put them playing each other for the national title. But when the bracket comes out, they may end up playing in the second round, and if that's the case, well, then they can't play for the national title. So if I had to pick a national champion, I would pick Ohio State, but I'm not going to pick one until the 12-team playoff bracket comes out. But I mentioned earlier this week that, I don't think Brian Kelly's getting fired, but I do think there'll be some whispers when the season's over with, because, he left Notre Dame to go to LSU. It's his third year now at LSU, and they're no better now than they were when he took over. And not only that, Notre Dame is better now than they were when he left. So when the program you leave gets better and the program you go to either stays the same or gets maybe a little bit worse, that's not a good thing. But, Brian Kelly won at Grand Valley State. He won at Central Michigan. He won at Cincinnati. He won at Notre Dame. So it's only logical to think, well, if he's won everywhere he's been, he'll win in Baton Rouge. But so far, it just has not worked out. And I know the whispers are going to start getting louder and louder because you lost to Florida. So now you're 6-4, but 2 of your losses are to Florida and USC, who are two mediocre teams. So it's not like you're 6-4, but you've lost to 4 really good teams. You haven't. You've lost to 2 good teams, but LSU shouldn't be losing to Florida and USC. But I've mentioned quite a few times here on the channel that it's obvious, even though Florida's record may not be good, that you can tell by the way they're playing that they want Billy Napier to be there next year. I mean, they are playing hard for him. And I said when the season started they were a 5 or 6 win team, and right now they've got 5 wins, and I think they lose next week and beat Florida State. So right now they're right where I thought they would be. They haven't got any better or worse since Napier's been there, but a lot of times you can watch how players play to see how satisfied they are, and they are playing their butts off for Billy Napier, and I do think he'll be there for another year or two. Rutgers wins again. They defeat Maryland 31-17. And Jalen, glad to have you here. And I think he did hire the wrong assistants, but some of them are no longer there. I just think from day one, they've not wanted him there, because as soon as he got that job, he started doing that fake Cajun accent. And I know he was trying to be funny and trying to be accepted, but when you've coached for 145 years and you've coached in 25 places, everybody knows what your voice sounds like. So it's not like you're a new guy that nobody's heard of. They know how you talk. They know how you sound. They know you're not Cajun. And when you get up there and try that, it makes you look completely foolish. And I think as soon as he done that, almost all the LSU fans were like, nope, this ain't going to work. And since he's not winning, they're not going to accept him. Now, if he was winning, they wouldn't care. You can do things like that as long as you're winning. But when you're not winning, you can't do things like that. And I've got one fly that is absolutely driving me crazy. But anyway, Arkansas State defeats Georgia State. I guess your name is Lunacy. You say it's your birthday. So happy birthday to your brother, Dixon. So happy birthday, Dixon. And that is from Lunacy. But Arkansas State defeats Georgia State 27-20. James Madison defeats Old Dominion 35-32. Baylor defeats West Virginia, and it's funny because you see the score and you never know how the game slowed down. But at halftime, it was Baylor 35, West Virginia 28, and the final score was Baylor 49, West Virginia 35. So both teams did play a little defense in the second half, but not the first half. Is Southern hospitality a thing, in my opinion? David, thank you for asking. In my opinion, I think it is, but I also think it depends on what you consider hospitality and what part of the South you're talking about. Because to me, some people think if you're down below Kentucky, that's the South. To me, that's not the South. To me, I think Southern hospitality is probably the state of Georgia, the state of South Carolina, and some parts of North Carolina. But I don't consider Florida. I know Florida's the South, but it's so far down there, it doesn't count. And to me, Tennessee is not really the South. And I think Mississippi is not the South. So I say it's a thing, but I say it's only a thing in Georgia and South Carolina and some parts of North Carolina. That's just my opinion. And hey there, Knowledge, glad to have you here. All of you that are commenting tonight, like David and Lunacy and Jalen, I don't recall seeing y'all's names in the past. If you can give the video a like and a thumbs up, I would appreciate it. If you have not yet subscribed, please do so. It takes about 2 seconds, and it helps the channel out tremendously. I post videos just about every single day. This time of the year, it's mainly a college football channel, especially now that college football is being played on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. But when college football ends, all throughout the year, I post videos about baseball, basketball, NASCAR, wrestling, and I do top 10 countdowns almost every week that sometimes ain't even about sports in any way, shape, or form. Matter of fact, the month of October, every single top 10 countdown I did had something to do with Halloween. Hey there, D.I. Glad to have you here. I only comment on the Arkansas State scores because everybody, for some reason, despises Butch Jones. But USC gets back to 500. They defeat Nebraska 28-20. Syracuse defeats California 33-25. Syracuse is now 7-3 in Fran Brown's first season as their coach. And I think I saw that Kyle McCord now has 304 completions this year, which is a Syracuse single season record. And he still has 2 games to go. And if you do quick division in your head, 304 completions in 10 games is a little more than 30 completions a game, because 30 times 10 is 300. He's at 304. So that tells you Syracuse is a passing team. Illinois defeats Michigan State 33-16. Louisiana Tech, in a slugfest defensively, defeats Western Kentucky 12-7. In the Battle of Columbia, the Columbia, South Carolina Gamecocks defeat the Columbia, Missouri Tigers 34-30. Lenore Sellers had a touchdown pass with 15 seconds left to go in the game. And I'm actually glad Missouri lost because I've said since like week 4 that they have no business being ranked. To me, they were extremely overrated when the season started, and they really looked sloppy all year long. But really, more specifically than that, since about week 5, they've either lost every game or the games they've won have been ugly. They ain't looked good in 8 weeks. So why in the world they were still ranked, I have no idea. They should fall out of the rankings now. I know that Brady Cook's a good quarterback, and I know that Luther Burden's a good receiver. But outside of those two players, they're average at every other spot. So I have no idea why they were still ranked. But sure to God, now they won't be ranked. I think a lot of times that stuff comes from these supposed experts that put out their rankings preseason, and they think they know it all and claim they know it all. And I think if you rank somebody like Missouri as high as you ranked them preseason, and then all of a sudden they start falling in the polls, then all these so-called experts have to admit they were wrong because you had this team ranked way up here and they're not there now. So I think a lot of times those teams are overranked and they stay up there because the supposed experts don't want to come out and say, hey, I was wrong. They're not any good. We see every year now Missouri's overranked. Most years LSU's overranked. But I think it's just because they don't want to come out and say, hey, I was wrong. Oregon, in an ugly game, defeats Wisconsin 16-13. At one point in about mid third quarter, Wisconsin actually led that game 13-6, but they never scored again. And Oregon ends up winning the game 16-13. Wisconsin just needed a little bit more offense, and they just couldn't find it. So Oregon was behind 13-6. They come back and win the game. Hey there, Intan. Glad to have you here. Hey there, Andrew. Glad to have you here. I'm talking some college football. If y'all have anything you'd like to say about college football or anything, as long as it's logical, I try to respond to every comment. Of course, you get those robots that comment, and you can't stop that. But I try to respond to all the actual real people that say logical stuff. Hey there, Simple Life Hacks. Glad to have you here. Boise State is a team right now that we really got to start looking at because they're the highest ranked group of 5 team. So as long as they keep winning, they'll be the group of 5 team that gets the automatic playoff berth. They defeat San Jose State 42-21. I think I saw yesterday morning that Boise State running back Ashton Genty is on pace for, I want to say, 2,700 yards, which is absolutely incredible. That would be a single season record in 14 games. And Intan or Intan, ever how you say your name, I apologize if I'm saying it wrong. You are from Indonesia, so glad to have you here from Indonesia. But Boise State wins again. They defeat San Jose State 42-21. Notre Dame, speaking of the Fighting Irish, they defeat Virginia 35-14. Right now, the Fighting Irish are staring down a playoff berth, and they'll make it unless they lose one of their final 2 games, which I don't think they will. And yes, I know you can score 21 with just field goals. 7 field goals gives you 21. As a matter of fact, Simple Life Hacks, I believe there was a NFL game earlier this year. It might have been the Commanders back around week 2 or 3 that actually won a game with 7 field goals. But if you don't watch the game, you see 21, your first instinct is, 3 touchdowns. But it was 7 field goals, and I think it was the Commanders. Penn State defeats Purdue 49-10. And boy, I bet Purdue misses Joe Tiller, because when I was growing up, Joe Tiller was their coach back when they had Kyle Orton at quarterback and Drew Brees at quarterback. And Purdue was actually a consistent 7 or 8 win team. And then Joe Tiller retired, and they really haven't done much since then. They had a couple good years under Brom. It looked like Brom was starting to turn them around, and he leaves and goes to Louisville, and now Purdue's just terrible. Tulane shuts out Navy 35-0. Stanford is now 3-7, and they finished 3-9 last year. So the Cardinal now need one more win to improve from last year's win total. They defeat Louisville 38-35. Arizona State pulls off a minor upset because Kansas State was ranked 16th going into the game. The Sun Devils with the win 24-14. Georgia defeats Tennessee 31-17. Tennessee gives up more than 19 points in the game for the first time this year, and I think I actually did two different videos earlier in the week where I said I thought Georgia would win the game because they knew they had their backs to the wall after losing their second game last week, and Georgia was the home team, and they ain't had a home game in about a month. So I knew they were going to be loud and ready to play, and they were. And Tennessee looked good in the first quarter. They got out to a 10-0 lead, and then after that, their offense didn't do much the rest of the game. North Carolina defeated Wake Forest 31-24. North Carolina is now 6-4, and I say all the time that Mac Brown is an annual 7 or 8 win team, and right now he's got 6 wins, and I think North Carolina wins at least one of their final 2 games, if not both. So he'll finish 8-4, 7-5, which is what he does. SMU wins again. They defeat Boston College 38-28. And I talked about earlier in the week Boston College losing their starting quarterback, Thomas Castellanos, who is transferring. And it's funny because now with the whole transfer portal NIL thing, players now can, in the middle of the season, say, I'm transferring. And nobody bats an eye. But the whole Bill O'Brien Castellanos thing was never going to work in the first place because Bill O'Brien is an old school coach. He prefers a drop back passing quarterback, but he'll take a scrambling quarterback as long as you're a pass first quarterback, but you'll run if you have to. But Castellanos was a run first quarterback that'll pass if he has to. He wants to throw the ball 15 times a game and run 25. So I had a feeling it just was not going to work. But when the season started, Boston College was winning. So you really can't say a whole lot when you're winning. But now the season's progressed, they're no longer winning. So now we got to sit back and see where Castellanos ends up going to school at. Colorado defeats Utah 49-24. So now we got to wait and see what the new playoff poll will look like come Tuesday, because with Tennessee losing, they should fall out of the top 10. Missouri should fall out of the rankings, and Kansas State should fall out of the rankings. LSU should fall out of the rankings. So we'll have to wait and see what the new playoff poll will look like come Tuesday night. Even though Oregon struggled to beat Wisconsin, they're still undefeated, so I think they'll stay number 1, especially considering number 2 is Ohio State, and Oregon beat them, so it makes no sense at all for Ohio State to pass them. So I think it'll still be Oregon 1 and Ohio State 2. And then after that, I guess we'll find out come Tuesday night. And of course, as soon as the poll comes out, people are going to start talking about this team's ranked too high. This team ain't high enough. This team got shafted. Why'd they do this? And I've said it a million times, but it continues to ring true. They can do what they want because there are no rules. So when there's no rules and it's all opinion based, you can do what you want to, and nobody can say anything because you can't point and say, well, look what this says. There's nothing. It's all strictly their opinion. If they want to come out Tuesday night and put a 5-5 team at number 1, they can do that. Now, they're not going to, but they could. And guess what? You can't stop it because it's opinion-based. So any thoughts on any of this, please feel free to let me know. Earlier this week, my boss said, Do I make myself clear? No. I still see you. And that's your dad joke of the day. And that wraps it up for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of three. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.